all I could see was darkness, and I didn't know what I was going to do. The car didn't see me, it pulled out of the side road and it knocked me off the bike. I went underneath the car and I got dragged down the road by my head. Obviously paralysed from the chest down. And I was never going to walk again. I only had about a 30% chance of survival. I hated everybody that could walk because they could do the thing that I couldn't, simply stand up. It was a life I didn't want. I couldn't see into the future. I couldn't see the happiness that I would have. I couldn't see the light that was at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, so last year Adam Berry announced at the summer launch that we would be looking to take health and well-being to the next level, and today is that day. Now, we didn't just want to launch any old health and well-being programme. We didn't just want to put stickers and posters up and that sort of thing. We wanted to do a health and well-being programme that was different but would ultimately make a difference to you. Now, we sent a survey out in December last year to all staff asking what it was you wanted from a health and wellbeing programme, and the response we got was staggering. We got 29% of people responding. Mental health was the subject that you told us was most important to you. Now, rather than printing out standard wellbeing posters, we wanted to do something different. We wanted you to hear firsthand from someone who has experienced life in every way. And we wanted to make sure that you felt that difference. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Talan.
Thank you very much. Take that until after. I haven't done anything yet. So, I'm going to tell you a story, and it's the last 20 or so years of my life and the things that I've experienced, and hopefully you can take one or two things away with you. If during the story there are some questions, I will answer them, but at the end we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A, so if you hold on to it, then I can answer them at the end of my little story, because I may answer it later on actually in the presentation. So 20 years of my life, yes. So we go back to March 2003, and I was a PE teacher, which for me was the perfect job because I love sport. It doesn't matter what sort of sport it is, I just love it. From football to tiddlywinks, whatever it is, I love it. And I love teaching. And so being a PE teacher was the perfect job for me. And I was living in Bath. I don't know if any of you have been to Bath, it's a beautiful city, and I had a lovely girlfriend, Claire, and I had a plan for the next 10 years, and that plan was to become a head teacher. And the first part of that plan was to go to Africa. I had a job at the Mombasa Academy, I was going to go out to Africa, experience a completely different culture for a couple of years, then come back to the UK, become head of a department, become a deputy head, and become a head teacher. So my life was pretty amazing, it was going in the right place, living the dream, and I thought everything was wonderful. You know, we all have dreams and we all have aspirations, and some are short term, you know, what are we going to be doing at the weekend? And some are long term, where do we see ourselves in 5 to 10 years time? Every now and then, something gets in the way of our plans, and you've all experienced this. You know, you've all experienced the pandemic, and it got in the way of the things that you had planned. Obviously, back in 2003, there was no pandemic. Unfortunately for me, there was a motorcycle accident. So I was on my way to play rugby. A car didn't see me, it pulled out of the side road, and it knocked me off the bike. It knocked me off the bike, but it knocked me onto the other side of the road and straight into the path of the oncoming traffic. So that traffic wasn't able to take any avoiding action, and it went straight over the top of me. When the car hit me, it hit me right in the middle of the back here, and it shattered two bones we call T4 and T5. So that immediately paralysed me at this level down. I went underneath the car, my head got wedged underneath the car, and I got dragged down the road by my head, and that broke two more bones in my neck at what we call C6 and C7. Now, I'm extremely fortunate, because if those bones had moved 1 more millimetre, it would have damaged the spinal cord at this level. I wouldn't have the use of my arms, and life would be very different. So, weirdly, I consider myself extremely fortunate. I got rolled underneath the car, massive internal injuries. I came out the back of the car. I was still alive, couldn't believe it, only to see another car coming towards me. I was like, oh no, I'm going to get run over twice. This is not my day. Unfortunately, that car stopped just a few feet away from my face. And the guy in the car that didn't run me over, he comes out, and bearing in mind he has just seen me go underneath the car, he walks around the front, he looks down at me, he goes, "Hey mate, you alright?" I'm looking at him thinking, what are you talking about? I've just been run over by a car. Lately I'm not alright. Get on the phone to the ambulance. He did. The ambulance took about 25 minutes to arrive, and during that time I was bleeding into my right lung. I'd collapsed the left lung with the ribs, so I punctured my left lung, and I was bleeding into the one lung that I had remaining. And as the ambulance crew arrived, apparently my sort of vital capacity, how much I could breathe in and out, was down to about half a litre, and I lost consciousness. And so it's all credit to the ambulance crew that arrived, that they were able to stabilise me. They effectively saved my life. And then they took me to Salisbury. So Salisbury has a specialist unit for people that have had spinal cord injuries. And it was there where I was deposited and passed over to the care of the Duke of Cornwall Spinal Injuries Unit. So in one moment of time, I've gone from a PE teacher that is loving life, had all these wonderful dreams and aspirations, to somebody that is very badly broken in our hospital. I was in and out of consciousness. I didn't really know what was going on. When I finally had enough about me to have a conversation with the consultant, he told me that I'd been in this traumatic accident, that I was obviously paralysed from the chest down. I was never going to walk again. And due to the severity of the injuries that I sustained, I only had about a 30% chance of survival. And if I did survive, that I would be in hospital for up to 2 years. And so this was my new life. And initially, it was a life I didn't want. My happiness, my meaning for life came from sport. I've just been told that that has been taken away from me. And at the time, I couldn't see beyond the change that had happened to me. And I simply asked the doctors and nurses to switch off the life support machine, because it would be far more humane to allow me to die, because I would never have happiness in my life. You know, all I could see was darkness and misery, and it was being, more humane to let me go. We have the Hippocratic Oath, and it stops doctors and nurses switching off life support machines, and I'm very glad that they didn't, because I found out that there are loads of things that I can do. But at the time, when the change happened, I couldn't see into the future. I couldn't see the happiness that I would have. I couldn't see the light that was at the end of the tunnel. And when we have change happen to us in our lives, often we just see the impact of change. Just as you did when we had COVID and we had lockdown, many people just saw the immediate impact of it. They couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They couldn't see the hope. They couldn't see the return to normality. And it's a common thing. It's not unusual. In fact, most people have this issue where they have change and they just see the impact. You know, and for me, all I could see was darkness, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Unfortunately for me, a guy that'd been injured about 4 years came into hospital for a regular checkup. So every year to 2 years, we go back to our units and we get effectively an MOT. And they spoke to him and said, "Oh, look, do you mind having a chat with Talan? He's a new injury and he's really struggling." And he came and he spoke to me and he told me that being in a wheelchair was going to be difficult, that there were going to be lots of challenges. But the challenges were worth taking because you could do lots and lots of different things. And he started listing all the different things that he was doing, the fun stuff he was, getting on with. And then he finished off by saying, "Oh yeah, one last thing. I've just come back from skiing." And I looked at him and I thought, "Have you been outside smoking a bit of weed?" Because I'm in hospital and I'm on a considerable amount of morphine. Right, so I am quite literally off my face. But even I couldn't hallucinate that someone who is paralysed could go skiing. He said, no, honestly, you have this fiberglass seat, it's on a metal frame, there's some sort of suspension underneath it, then they have skis, and then your arms, you put these little miniature crutches, and they've got little baby skis on them. And by using that equipment, you can actually go down the slopes. I thought, that's amazing. Couldn't believe it. I'd skied when I was younger, and I knew the happiness that skiing gave me. And I started to think, well, maybe if I learnt to ski, that would give me the happiness. And that idea started to take root. And I started to think about it. And the more I started to think about it, the more excited I got about it. And I realised that, maybe if I learned to ski, it would give me some excitement, and maybe I could challenge myself to be the best skier that I could be. And that would mean that I would need to get into the British team. And then I'd need to compete against the best in the world. So maybe I could go to the Paralympics. So in my head, I thought, I'm going to learn to ski, I'm going to get in the British team, and I'm going to go to the Paralympics. And unfortunately, I must have verbalised my ideas, and then someone grasped me up to the newspaper. So 12 days after my accident, me and my big mouth has got me in a whole world of trouble. And then it was a case of, right, am I going to be one of those people that gives it a load of talk but never backs it up? And I'm sure you've all come across people like that. They always give it that, but they never actually do what they say they're going to do. And I thought, you know what, this is my opportunity, this is my chance to always do the things that I say I'm going to do. But loads of people said that I was never going to do it. I was too disabled. I was going to be in hospital for 2 years. What were you thinking about? Just concentrate on getting healthy, on recovering. But it's really important because I had this idea of going skiing. I had something to look forward to. I had a mental anchor to hold me. Because when you have these changes and everything is so dark, you just don't know where to look. And if you've got something to hold on to, some value in your life, something to look forwards to, you've got that, and it holds you, and it stops you sort of being dragged into the pit of despair. Because it's so difficult to get out of that pit once you're in it. And so if you've got something that you can hold on to, and it stops you being dragged down, it's vital to have. And I had that skiing. But I didn't know how I was going to get there. There's me in hospital 2003, the Games 2010. If you look at it in one go, it just looks too difficult. You might have been set a task, and when you first looked at it, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? Well, if we start to break things down, we can take it step by step by step, and we can finally reach it. And obviously, like I said, the first thing is to survive, to stay alive. The advantage I had over so many other people was that goal of going skiing. I had that mental anchor, that thing to stop me being dragged into that pit of despair. Then I had to go through rehabilitation. I had to learn how to be in a wheelchair. I had to learn to push myself about one of these things. I had to learn to pull wheelies. Press the ladies. Oh, yeah. Right. But in the real world, there are things like curbs. And if I get to a curb, I've got to go on the back wheels and then I roll down the curb. So it's called back wheel balance, and so there is a real reason for me doing that other than just me trying to show off. Independent living, things like learning to drive. So I've driven here today, I've got an automatic, and there are 2 rods that go down to the accelerator and the brake. It comes to a hinge point underneath the steering column, and there's a little handle next to the steering wheel. So I pull on the handle and it makes the car go. I push on the handle and it stops. It's that simple. But when I was in hospital, even the concept of getting in a car seemed mind-blowing, let alone me driving one. Then learning to ski. I've chosen to do something and I don't even know if I can do it. And who's to say that there's something out there that you haven't tried, that you could challenge yourself to do? They're getting in the team and all the other bits and pieces up to being selected for the British team. Because even if you're in a national team, it does not mean you will go to the Olympics or Paralympics. You have to meet the selection criteria. And so this became a very basic step-by-step method. I just sort of chunked it. And if you get given a big task, it is easier just to break it down into simple steps. And then each one of those steps can be further broken down. But you have to make a start on how you can plan your way forwards. And this is me in hospital, and I had to begin the process of accepting what has happened. And it's a very long process to accept change in your life. I would say that actually it took me 13 years to be okay about being in a wheelchair. Okay, so it's a very, very long process. But I had to make the start. And when you do start to process everything, the first stage is that denial. And one of the things that I used to do was I used to try and make myself go to sleep so that I could wake up and it would all be a horrible dream, and then I'd be all right and I wouldn't be paralysed. But of course, every time I woke up, I was still paralysed. And I realised that that wasn't going to work. And then there was the whole scenarios that you play out. What if I hadn't have agreed to go and play rugby? What if I hadn't got on the motorbike? What if I'd taken my car? What if I hadn't stopped and chatted to that person? But the thing is, everything you do in life leads you to where you are at the precise moment in time. And you can't undo it. So you just have to try and accept what has happened. That's not to say that you just brush it to one side and go, yeah, I accept it. You allow yourself to go through the range of feelings. And when bad things happen to you, you're fully entitled to be upset, to be angry, to rage. And I did, and I raged, and I was frustrated, and I got to a point of just pure hatred for a while. I hated everybody that could walk because they could do the thing that I couldn't, simply stand up. I got over that. I don't hate anyone at all. I think you're wonderful. Yeah, way beyond that now. But you go through. It's incredible the scale of the emotions that you will go through. But it's natural. It's natural for you to feel those things, and you have to allow yourself to go through it. Because if you don't allow yourself to experience the emotions and you push them to one side, those emotions don't magically vanish. They simply sit there. And then the next thing that you push to one side will sit on top of it, and then sit on top of it, and then sit on top of it, until that pile becomes so great that it will simply come crashing down on you and swamp you. And that is when people often feel totally lost, and they don't know where to look because they haven't dealt with things as they happen. So let yourself be upset. Let yourself be angry. It is only temporary. You will go through these sort of crests and troughs of feeling happy and feeling sad. And certainly in the early days, I was up and down and up and down. In the state of 1 minute, I would go through various ranges of feelings. And now it sort of has evened out, and the dips that I have are very, very sort of far apart, I suppose. And it becomes the path for your acceptance. But like I said, it took me 13 years. So don't expect things to happen overnight or over a fortnight. It can take a very long time, but you will get there. the easiest part of my entire plan was simply getting into one of these things, because actually pushing about is really easy. You know, you just push both together, you go forwards, one back, and you spin around. You know, this is really easy to manoeuvre. And so I had to spend 16 and a half weeks lying in bed, and then they put me into a wheelchair, and they put a chest frame, neck brace, they hoisted me up, they sat me in the wheelchair, and they said, right, sit there, don't move, 5 minutes, and then you're going back to bed. And I looked at them and I thought, are you mad? I've been in bed 16 and a half weeks. I'm never going back to bed. This is me up now forever. Where is the exit? I want to go outside. And I was like, no, just stay there, don't move. I was like, you've got another thing coming, you think I'm sitting here and not moving. Where's the exit? And I could see it, and off I went for it. Said, I want fresh air. And they were like, no, just stay there. I was like, up yours, I'm off. And off I went outside, made a break for freedom, got outside, took a deep breath of fresh air, and promptly collapsed. And when I woke up, I was back in my bed. Oh, well, that wasn't so good. What happened? And they said, oh, we told you not to move. You know, your body lying flat for 16 and a half weeks, it's used to that. As soon as you sat upright, the blood started to go into your legs. Your legs, they don't work anymore. They don't help the blood to come back up. So the blood pooled in your legs and you fainted. Well, great. So the next day, same sort of thing, chest brace, neck collar, hoisted up, sit there. Right, don't move. I think they put the brakes on, even chopped my wheels so I couldn't escape. And I was allowed to sit up for 5 minutes, and then they put me back to bed. And then the next day it was 10 minutes, and then back to bed. And gradually it increased in time, and to the point where I was up and being able to push about in the chair for most of the day. And that took me 4 weeks. And I thought this was going to take me 1 day. And it made me realise that sometimes even the easiest parts of our plans can take far longer. The things that initially might seem simple can actually be really difficult. We finally get there, you just have to persevere, okay? And things aren't always as easy as they appear. I mean, I hadn't even left hospital and I was getting hit by setbacks. I just couldn't believe it. And the difficult thing is, you know, when you get hit by setbacks, what do? Well, the path of least resistance is to give up. That's the easiest thing. Yeah? Go and give up, go and sit in the corner with all the other people that have given up. And in the hospital that I was in, there were a lot of people that had given up, and they were bitter and they were angry, and it was very easy for me to go and join them. The hardest thing is to try and accept the setbacks, to try and learn from the setbacks so that you can move forwards. You know, sometimes it's really difficult to move forwards, but if you can try and treat the setbacks as opportunities for you to learn, to grow, then you can continually move forward, even if it's only tiny little steps forwards. But if you do make that choice, you can start to make progress. You can start to reach the goals that you set yourself. And so after 6.5 months, not 2 years, 6.5 months after my injury, it was time for me to leave hospital. And so we had a big party to celebrate in order for me to say thank you to the team of people that made it possible for me to leave hospital. Because I didn't do it by myself. There was the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare support workers, the physios, my friends, my family. There was a massive team of people supporting me so that I was able to leave hospital. And I wanted to recognise their hard work, as well as recognising my own hard work. So we'd reached a milestone and we celebrated it. And everyone felt good about reaching that milestone. And therefore, because we took time to recognise where we had got to, we then wanted to go on to the next stage. Because if you don't ever stop and recognise where you've got to, you just feel like you're a hamster in the wheel. You're just going round and around and around, and you're not really seeing your progress. But when you stop, you take time, reward, you feel good about reaching one of those steps. And therefore, you want to go on to the next one. And certainly, when we celebrated that, everyone was excited about going on to the next. And the next one was going skiing. So I went to America. There's a place called Winter Park, and they do disabled skiing. And I was assessed by the instructors, and they told me that because I had no stomach muscles, okay, so my level of paralysis is here, and if I put my arms out in front of me, I only get to here, and then I fall over. The same thing is if I stick an arm out to one side, and I let go of my chair, just the weight of my arm will pull me over. And so they said, because I have no stomach muscles, no core stability, I'm going to be in a bi-ski. So the bi-ski is the picture on the left. Okay, so it's low to the ground, it's got 2 skis underneath it, and that was what I was going to be in. And by the end of the morning, I was flying around the mountain. Oh my word, I was amazing at skiing. And I just thought, why is everyone telling me it's so difficult? I'm the greatest skier in the world. I'm going to be the world champion probably by the end of the day. And I went back in at lunchtime and I spoke to the people that were on the course. And I said, have you seen me out there? I'm epic. I'm amazing at skiing. I'm going to be the world's greatest ski racer. And they said, oh, no, you're not. And I went, what do you mean? No, I'm not. Have you not seen me? I'm amazing. They said, yeah, but you're in a bi-ski. The rules are that you can only race in a monoski. So a monoski is the picture on the right. A monoski has 1 ski underneath it. It sits a lot higher off the ground. They're quite unstable. So I went to the instructor. I said, hi, Mr. Instructor, can I have a monoski, please? Because I want to be a racer. And he said, no. And I said, what do you mean, no? And he said, well, you're a high-level injury. You have no stomach muscles. You have no core stability. Only people with stomach muscles can ski a monoski. All you high-level lot, you just cruise around the mountain in a bi-ski. Off you go. I said, no, honestly, I'm going to be a ski racer, so can I have a monoski, please? He said, no, it's never going to happen. You're just going to waste our time, just going to fall over. He said, no, honestly, I want to be a racer. Can I have a monoski? And we had a bit of a disagreement, and I invited him to come with me to the corner of the room, introduced him to some new words of the English language. At which point he went, all right, buddy, all right, tell you what, calm down. Tell you what, we'll give you a monoski, but believe us, all you're going to do is fall over. You're going to waste our time. And I looked at him, I thought, what do you know? I've been skiing all morning, I'm amazing. So after lunch, I was in my monoski, and I looked at all my doubting instructors. I said, all right, lads, watch this. And I set off, and I went no more than about 2 yards, and bam, straight down I went. And they picked me up, and I dusted the snow off myself, and I looked at the instructors and went, that was my pretend go. This is my real go. I set off again. I went 3 yards. Bam, down I went on my other side. They picked me up, I dusted the snow off myself, and I thought, this is not going as I planned. But third time lucky. It's always third time lucky, no problem. I set off again. I went no more than 3 yards. Bam! Down I went yet again. For the next 5 days, all I would do was go 3 yards, maybe 5 yards, and fall over. I was absolutely rubbish. I was so bad at skiing, and I was doing all the things they said I was going to do. I was falling, I was failing, I was having tantrums, I was hurting myself. I was just utterly useless. And on the 6th day, the instructor said, look, enough is enough now, Talan. Yeah, 5 days you've been on the bunny hill, 5 days you've just fallen over. It's time for you to go back into the bi-ski and go and cruise around the mountain like all the other high-level injuries and give up on this idea of becoming a racer. And I was like, no, I want to be a racer. And they said, it's never going to happen. And I said, look, please, let me have one more go. And they said, well, what's the point? 5 days, you've had, and all you've done is fall over. You proved us right. You're useless. And I was like, oh, please. And I whinged and I moaned. And finally they said, okay, I tell you what, look, we'll give you one final go, but we'll take you to the top of the mountain. So they put me on the lift, and I got off the top, and I looked down, and I was like, oh my word, that is a long way down. If I fall over every 5 yards, snow will have melted by the time I get down the bottom. It won't take me that long. And sometimes, when we are trying to do things, we try so hard, we often get in our own way. We're too busy thinking about the future, about where we want to go, we forget about being in the moment, and we forget about being present and allowing yourself to do it, because we all have an incredible innate ability, and you've just got to allow yourself to do things at times rather than forcing it to happen. And so I closed my eyes and I took 3 deep breaths, and I just tried to realize that I was a sitting skier, that I wasn't a racer. I just was going to be present in the moment and allow myself just to slide down the snow. And I opened my eyes and I set off, and I went 3 yards. And then I went 5 and then 10, and I started picking up speed. I was going towards the edge of the slope, and I thought, oh, I better do a turn. And I did a little turn, and I headed back across the slope, and I was like, oh, picked up some speed, do another turn. I did another one. And then suddenly I found myself going down the mountain, and I was thinking turn after turn after turn. And I came to a stop, and I hadn't fallen over. I looked up and down, I was like, oh my word, I've just come halfway down the mountain. Maybe if I practice really hard, I'll get from the top to the bottom in one go without stopping and without falling. That will be my new goal, just to get down the mountain. And 4 days later I did. I made it just the once to get from the top to the bottom in one go without stopping, without falling. And I was absolutely over the moon. I was made up, as were the instructors. And sometimes when we are trying to achieve things, we're progressing, and then we come across this brick wall that's in our way, and you're hitting that brick wall time and time again, and nothing is happening. And you get to a point where you say, I give up, and you walk away from the brick wall. I'd always encourage you to go back and hit that wall at least one more time. Give it one more go, because you will be amazed how many times that wall will fall down and open up that pathway to you. Because if I hadn't given it one more go, I wouldn't have had my breakthrough, I wouldn't have become a ski racer, and I know that my life would be very, very different. We've always got to give it just that one more go. A month later I went skiing again, this time to Whistler, and whilst I could sort of stay upright, I couldn't really control going left and right, and I spent a lot of time crashing into trees, into people, and I was thinking, how am I going to get any better? The instructors that are with me, they're very nice, but they don't know what it is like for me. And if you want to get better at something, the simple answer is you've got to go and find the experts. And for me, the experts were the British Disabled Ski Team. And they were training in France, and I went and joined them for 2 weeks, and I watched them, and we spoke, and we decided that I needed to adapt the sit ski even more. What I needed were shoulder straps. So we took a strap off my luggage, we attached it to the back of the seat, sort of about here. There was a strap that simply came over my shoulders and around the waist belt that I had. And so by shrugging my shoulders, I could put tension in this strap, which sort of helped me control my hips. And that meant I could turn left and right when I wanted to, and I stopped crashing into so many people. And I was able to go through the course that the coach had set. And I obviously impressed them so much that 2 weeks later, I was sent a letter inviting me to join the development squad. And so that is 14 months after my original accident. And so I sent that newspaper cutting to my consultant, the person that told me I would be in hospital for 2 years, and said, look where I've got to. Why don't you start telling people what they can do rather than what they can't do? Let them know of the opportunities that are out there, and then it's up to them as to when they take on those opportunities and take on those challenges. And so now they do, whenever people have an injury, they're always reminded and told of all the things that they can do, and then it's up to that individual as to when they take on those challenges, but at least they know that there's hope, there are opportunities for them. Not too much snow here in this country, so I had to think of other things to do to help me. There are a couple of lakes that are dedicated for disabled water skiing. One of them is Heron Lake, it's junction 13 of the M25, and the water skiing is really good for my balance. Okay, so I can practice that, helps me with my balance. One of the things that I am very, very good at is crashing. I'm amazing at that. And the first thing that hits the ground normally are my shoulders. So in order to protect the shoulders, I use a hand bike, and that builds up the muscle mass around the shoulders in order to protect it. So water skiing is good for balance. Hand cycling is effectively injury prevention. They aren't skiing, but they are helping me with my skiing. So sometimes if you've been set a challenge, it's a case of what other things can you do if you can't do the one main thing that you can bring in that will help you move forwards in the end. Now, I grew up in Cornwall, and I used to sail, and I used to race one of these things. It's called a Dart 18, and I really wanted to get back to sailing. But no matter how much hand cycling I did and how strong I got, there was no way I could pull that up and down the beach. In fact, I couldn't even pull the sails up. But I've got a buddy called Clive who's able-bodied, and he is strong enough to get that up and down the beach and also to pull the sails up. But Clive can't sail. So together, Clive gets the boat ready, then he helps me get on, and I go out with him, and we go sailing together. You know, if it was us by ourselves, we wouldn't be able to do it. But together, we can go out and we can enjoy sailing. And I am teaching Clive how to sail. I'm not teaching him how to sail independently, because he'd leave me on the beach. I'm stupid. But it's amazing how much further you can go when you work in partnerships. But it is about commitment and practice. And I say commitment because if you commit to something, you will do it even if you don't feel like doing it. Okay, because it's not always sunny, it's not always lovely. You've got to commit to it, because I had to commit to anything up to 6 months of the year for training. And that meant it took me away from my friends, from my family, and that can often cause difficulties at home. But you have to put in the time, you have to put in the effort, and if you commit to something and you do it when you don't feel like doing it, that actually leads to motivation, because you realise that you've done it when you didn't want to, and that actually makes you feel pretty good inside, and that creates motivation. So commitment will always create motivation, but motivation will not necessarily lead to commitment. So always commit to an idea rather than being motivated to do something. That's my own particular thoughts. But yeah, 6 months of the year away travelling, even going down to New Zealand in our summer for their winter in order to get more miles in so that I can practice, because you have to put the miles in. You can't simply get good at something by simply turning up once a week and doing it. You've got to put in time and effort in order to practice. And I constantly had to think of ways of doing sit ski in a better way, adapting things for me. Because just when a sit ski is built, it's built generically and it's built for everyone. And remember, the mono skis are mainly done by people with stomach muscles, and they have far greater ability to control it. So the picture on the left-hand side is the bottom of my sit ski, and that U-shaped bit of metal at the bottom is normally the other way around. But for me, I turned it upside down and dropped the entire sit ski by an inch or two, and that helped lower the centre of gravity and made it easier for me to turn, because I have to use my shoulders. I don't have my stomach. I also continually developed the simple strap system that I have is now fairly complicated, with an army yoke and webbing and straps, and I've even taken the top of the fiberglass seat off to put a leather strap around it, because when the fiberglass seat is too high, it digs into your ribs. So the leather acts as support, but it's also a little bit flexible. So it's constantly thinking of better ways of doing something. Just because it comes out looking like, version 1, doesn't mean that version 1 is going to suit you. You have to modify it for your own particular use. And for those of you that have never seen someone sit skiing, here is a video. So if you can't see it, you might want to. So we get on the chairlift with everyone else. You can see my buddy Ben will be to my right. Seat comes in and he pushes back up and sits on it. I do the same and off we go. So you train outside the gates, get warmed up. These are little stubbies for practicing. And then the first thing you normally do is slalom, so slow speed, very twisty. Then you move on to giant slalom, so the gates are a little bit further apart, not quite so twisty. And then you learn to carve the ski rather than skid it. You see there, the ski's biting in the snow and carving around. This is doing Super G. So the speed's starting to increase. You're doing about 50 miles an hour now. Gates further apart. And then the final thing you get to do is downhill. Obviously downhill means go down the hill as fast as possible. The fastest that I've managed to clock up so far, 83 miles an hour. So you can still go pretty quick even when you're sat down. But it is about progression. I didn't just start off and do 83 miles an hour, can't you? That'd be mad. And you've got to go out there and do it in all the conditions, not just when it's sunny. There might be so much snow you've got no idea which way is up or down. Or it's 6 o'clock in the morning, it's minus 25 Celsius. Oh, you don't want to be there, but you've got to get up that early to get to the top of the mountain, to inspect the course and run it, because you might be running speed events like that Super G, and you have to practice on the runs before the runs get open to the general public at 9 o'clock. Or it could even be raining. It does rain on the mountains. Happy to report that there is one team that goes out and trains in the rains, which is the British. We've got our umbrellas, we look a bit weird, but we're out there and doing it in all the conditions, not just when it's nice weather and it suits us. And failing is definitely part of your learning experience. And for me, failing comes in crashing. And with crashing, there comes two areas that I have to consider to rebuild. And one is obviously the physical side, and the other is the mental side, my confidence. And one takes far longer than the other. And I had a massive crash in a downhill race. I crashed so violently that I actually flew over the top of the safety netting. It took about 40 minutes to find me because I just basically didn't show up at the bottom. God. And then they were like, well, where is he? He's not on the course. And they were like, I don't know where he is. He just vanished. He's stolen by aliens. No, I was just lying about 30 yards off piste in a big snowdrift. But when they finally found me and they took me down, and I was, taken to hospital, I'd smashed my shoulder in, and that took about 3 months to get better. But confidence-wise, I nearly gave up. And what I had to do was I had to go back to skiing and just start skiing for pleasure and for fun, to reignite that spark of enjoyment in it. And then I started off and did slalom, and then I did triathlon, and slowly rebuilt myself and slowly rebuilt my confidence to go at pace. I was able to exceed what I did because when I crashed at the downhill, I was only doing about 60 miles an hour. Obviously, I've now gone up to 80. So I've exceeded where I was, but it took far longer for my confidence to be rebuilt than just a physical injury. So if you do have setbacks and you do have challenges, be mindful to rebuild your confidence and be aware that confidence will take a really long time to come back to you. And don't try and rush it. And maybe take that step backwards and feel more comfortable doing things at a lower level, and then gradually take yourself back up to it. Hopefully you won't have any physical injuries, but it will be confidence that will be knocked when you have those setbacks. But you can always learn from it, and you can come back even stronger. When we get these setbacks, the easiest thing is to give up, to go and join the people, in the corner of the room that have all given up. That's the easiest thing to do. Obviously, with the setbacks, you can learn from them. You can see them as opportunities, and it's really difficult to do that. And sometimes you start looking externally for inspiration. And I would say to you, you don't need to look externally, but you actually look internally. Because inside each and every one of us, there is an incredible resource of energy, of resilience, of power. Every single one of you has resilience. You know, and you've all demonstrated resilience without even knowing it, because you've all learned to walk. When you were a child, no one taught you how to walk. You tried and you failed. You fell over. You tried and you fell over. You tried and you fell over. You tried and then you took a step and then you fell over. But at no point did you give up as a child. So you all have resilience inside you. Just as we get older, we forget about it. Sometimes it gets sort of knocked out of us, because once you start to walk as a child, you suddenly get told, no, don't do that. Don't go over there. Come here. And then there's sort of this negativity. These limits are put on you. And then gradually over time, we often forget that we have this innate resilience inside us. I call it the little person inside, because when I had these 16 and a half weeks of bed rest, of total quiet, I had a really long conversation with myself, a really long internal reflection. And I found this resilience inside. I found this energy. And everybody has it. You all have it. And it's just about tapping into it and trusting in yourself and believing in yourself. And if you can do that, you can achieve the things that you set yourself. And so 7 years to the day, effectively, when I said that I would learn to ski, get in the British team and go to the Paralympics, I went up that ramp, the picture on the right hand side, which is the opening ceremony of the 2010 Winter Games. And I was there as your athlete. And I was both honoured and humbled to be there, to represent Great Britain. And at the time, I was skiing really well. Not like my pretend well on my first day where I thought I was good, but you know, I'd reached number 5 in the world. And where we were training at the top of the mountain, my times were putting me in the top 5. So I thought, this is my opportunity, this is my chance to win the medal. All I need to do is give myself a good start, because that's my weak area. Due to my high level of injury, from stationary to get going is the tricky part. You know, once I'm going, I'm okay. And it came to the Super G race, and this was the one that I wanted to win. And I gave myself the best start I had ever done. By the time I got past that cameraman, I thought, I've won the gold medal. It's mine. It's in the bag. The guy at the bottom, he's already writing my name on it. I simply have to go down and collect it. This is like my victory lap. And I got to the first gate and I put the ski on its edge, and I expected the ski to carve around. But it didn't. It just started skidding and sliding sideways. And I got to the next gate. Again, I put the ski on its edge, but instead of it carving around, again, I started skidding and sliding sideways. So at the top of the mountain where we were training, it snowed. Snow was amazing. Halfway down the mountain, just above the start gate, that snow had fallen as rain. And it changes the structure of snow. It makes it slushy. And then just before our race, you know, the day before our race, the temperature plummeted and it turned all that slush into ice. So if you see the picture on the left-hand side, because I use my shoulders to turn, I have to bank my entire body. So I push the ski off the snow. If, like basically everybody else, I had stomach muscles, I would be bending at the waist and I would sit on top of the ski and I would push the ski down into the icy conditions. But I don't. It's the way that I ski. By using my shoulders, I simply bank. So I'm always pushing the ski off. So I need soft conditions rather than icy conditions. Just the way I ski. And so all the way down the mountain, as I'm turning, I'm skidding and sliding sideways, and I'm holding onto the edge as hard as I possibly could, and I'm going as fast as I possibly could. And I went across the finish line, and I looked up at the leaderboard, and my name wasn't at the top. And it wasn't on the second row or the third. And in fact, I had to look a very long way down to find my name. And it was down in 25th. I just thought I'd wasted 7 years of my life. I was a failure. I was an embarrassment to myself and to my friends and to my country. I was humiliated. I just couldn't face anybody. I was so distraught. And my coach was knocking on the door, when she asked me to come out, and finally I did, and I spoke to her about the race, and we said, you know, I said I gave myself the best start I'd ever done, and I was in the right place all the way down. Everything we trained for, I did. I gave everything. I went as fast as I possibly could. I gave my best. At which point my coach stopped me, she put her arms around me, and she told me how proud she was. Because when it mattered, I had given my best performance, and that she was proud of what I had achieved. And so now, some years later, I'm very proud of my 25th, because on that day, I gave my best performance. And that is all we can expect of anyone, that you give your best performance. You know, I'm sorry I can't sit here and show you a little gold medal, but I hope you will be pleased for me for my performance. And that was back in March 2010. And this is December 2010, so it's the very next race that I took part in. It's the very next Super G race, and all the same people are there. The the Paralympic champion is there, world champion is there, but this time conditions are soft, and I like soft conditions. I gave myself a great start in that race. I was in the right place all the way down the mountain. I went as fast as I possibly could, and I went through the finish line, but I didn't look at the leaderboard because I changed the way I approached racing. I was focused on the process, and I knew that when I went across the finish line, I had given my best performance, and I was going to be happy wherever that put me. And I went through the corral area, and I saw my teammates, and I headed over towards them, and they were all jumping up and down. I was like, guys, what's going on? And oh my God, you won the gold medal. You beat everybody by about 2 seconds. And I went on to become the European champion that year. So in one race, I give my best, and I'm 25th. The very next race, I give my best. I win the gold medal, and I go on to become European champion. I'm proud of both of them because on both of those occasions, I gave my best performance. And that is the most important thing that we can do, that we give our best performance. Now I am pretty epic at crashing. More video if you want to. There go my shoulders, and there go my shoulders again. I don't know where I'm going. Oh, I got knocked out there, completely unconscious. Look, I can crash into trees when they're nowhere near me.
Jesus.
So this is another really unpleasant accident that I had. And just about now, all the weight of everything and the rotation is pulling my head forward, and I honestly thought I was going to break my neck. They got me up the netting, they took me down to the hotel, I burst into tears, and I said, I give up. I'm never doing that again. So, bearing in mind what I've said to you, should I give up? Or should I give it one more go? One more go? Yeah?
One more go.
Yes?
Yeah.
Too bloody what I do. I found this thing called Boarder-Cross. Right, Boarder-Cross means you go down the mountain as fast as possible and you go over jumps. Yeah. It's like 1,000,000 times more dangerous. It's amazing. And I started doing Boarder-Cross, and then I started coaching, and I met these British guys, and they were amputees, and they were doing Boarder-Cross on snowboards, and they were just individuals. So we formed the British team. I started to manage and coach them. One of them went to the World Championships, got a silver medal. I came back to the UK, and I went in front of Paralympics GB because I'd been a Paralympian, I knew people, and I said, look, we've created this team, they need a proper coach, and they need a proper, organisation behind them. Unfortunately, Paralympics GB agreed with me, and they created the team, and at the next Paralympics, one of the guys was the flag bearer. And then at the most recent Paralympics, Winter Paralympics, one of them has actually won a medal. First time that GB have won Boarder-Cross amputee. So it's amazing what happens when you don't give up, the impact that you have. Because obviously if I'd given up, I wouldn't have got into Boarder-Cross, wouldn't have met them, wouldn't have helped set up the team, speak to Paralympics GB, and they may not have become Paralympians, and Great Britain may not have a silver medal. So never underestimate your sphere of influence and the impacts that you have on other people by you not giving up. And that's been my winters. Then I thought about the summertime. I thought, what can I do in the summer that's fun and exciting? And I started to think, what would be really cool is if I got back on a motorbike. And then I thought, what would be even cooler is if I learnt to ride a motorbike and I became a motorcycle racer. And I spoke to my friends and they said, well, no, that's never going to happen. You're paralysed, you can't ride a motorbike. And I spoke to the ACU, the governing body for motorcycle racing, and they said, no, we don't have paralysed motorcycle racers, and we are never going to have paralysed motorcycle racers. I really hate it when people tell me I can't do things. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'm going to set this up just like I did with the skiing. I'm going to put it into the step-by-step method and see if I can actually become a motorcycle racer. And does anyone think it's possible?
Yeah.
Obviously
Obviously,
it
yes.
looks like some things are very difficult. Anyone think it might be possible?
So,
I do.
yes.
Anyone else going to back me up?
Yes.
You should have done, because actually in 2012 I became the first paraplegic in the history of motorsport to race against able-bodied motorcycle racers. They made me start from the pit lane, so everyone else started, and then when the last person went past, Sid waved his flag, off I went, I joined the race, and I was absolutely dead last at the end of the first lap. But by the end of the race, I'd caught up and overtaken 9 other riders. And they were like, oh, you're not actually that slow. I tell you what, we'll let you start from the back of the grid. So I'm still held by someone, and then when the lights go out, I can join the race straight away. And by doing that, I progressed to what they call a national level of racer, and I am now an ACU race instructor. So I instruct able-bodied people how to be motorcycle racers. So I'm the one in the green bib instructing an able-bodied person in the orange bib on how to become a racer. But it's full integration in this country. There is no differentiation. You're either a racer or you're not. If you're, whatever, you're male or female, whatever, if you're, whoever you are, you're just a racer. There's no difference. I'll come on to that. The other thing I needed to do was to put demons to rest, to prove that I'm in charge of my life. So I bought an exact copy of the bike that I was paralysed on, turned it into a race bike, even painted it the same, and then went off and raced it. And in the very last race I did on that bike, we qualified in 3rd place. So we should have started on the front of the grid, but because I had to start at the back being held, I had to start in 44th at the back. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to focus on the processes and see what happens. And I gave my best performance, and in the first lap I overtook 29 riders. By the end of the race I'd managed to claw my way up to 6th place. And I was really pleased. I didn't win, but I knew that I'd given my best performance, and that to me was the most important thing. And it proved that I'm the person that's in charge of my life and not something that was beyond my control and the accident that happened. And in Italy, in France and Spain, they don't allow disabled riders to be integrated. They have to run their own separate championship, which also means they have the Disabled World Championships, or they have done in the past. And I've been across to them and managed to win the World Championships in 2018 for 600cc disabled riders. Out of all the lessons, the most important thing to realise is that I don't have any magical ingredient. You have exactly what I have. You have that little person inside. If you believe in yourself and if you trust in yourself, you can achieve the goals that you put out in front of you. There is no difference. You've got exactly what it takes to do anything that you want to do. And it will be what you do that defines you, not what you say you're going to do. All those people who give you talk and then never back it up. Be the person that does what they say they're going to do, because that is what people will remember you for. And you will be given a choice in your life. That was me voluntarily going in the trees rather than just crashing into them. So we're all given choice in our lives. My choice has been to use the little person inside, to believe in myself and to go beyond ordinary. And I hope that you will make the same choice as well. Thank you very much.